do any of you feel like, yeah, there is a particular group or scene of dancing that feels like home?
I'm from two Caribbean countries, so Jamaica and Grenada.
And Grenada, okay. Yeah.
So Jamaica is dancehall.
Yes.
And then Grenada is like soca. So
Yes.
I'm that you brought those up.
Yes.
But in the Caribbean, we also have like the culture of carnival.
Yes.
Which is, really tied to soca music.
Uh-huh.
And Jamaican parties are, well, dance is a really important part of Caribbean.
Right.
And so that's what feels like home for me is being at home and being like out in the streets in like carnival costumes.
Right, yeah. Yeah, carnival events are slightly different from like just sort of regular street parties, right?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, first of all, there's specific time.
For sure, yeah.
Yeah. And Grenada, you've got the jab style of music. Yeah, it's I mean, I know so little about it. I hope you can teach me more about it. I'm trying to describe it as it's almost like a form of role play, I guess. Yeah.
It's all very like pretending, all like a lot of like. It's really difficult to explain, but
But it has its own music.
yeah, yeah, and it's really like event based. Like I'd say, like it's super surrounded. Everything is surrounding carnival.
So it's still a very specific time where is it mostly because I know that in places like Trinidad it's very focused on harvest time.
Yeah.
Right. You know.
Trinidad carnival's coming up actually like this month. But for like Grenada, it's later in the year, so every party throughout the year is leading up to carnival.
Oh, okay. I see. Cool. All right. So yeah, you know, that's a dance culture. That's two separate dance cultures, even though, you know, I mean, they're geographically similar parts of the world, but separated by water, and they have distinct customs, distinct groups, and kinds of music that they're playing.
So obviously, you have like Bobby Schmurder, and then like 6ix9ine was really big at some point. Philly Snitch, and then Pop Smoke. Incredibly huge, like my senior year in high school, and unfortunately passed away. But like, yeah, those that kind of music is like, well, that kind of like environment, I guess, where like people dancing also kind of like identify with the music. Like, oh, this is like our music.
Right.
That's like really hard to find.
Do you feel it's your music?
I guess like not like mine, because like I can't really relate to a lot of the things that are in the song, but mine in the sense where it's like, oh, like all of my friends and like, all the people that I live with just kind of not really, but like actually that's like music.
And I guess that can be sort of described as contemporary hip hop, right? I mean, that's what we're talking about over here. I want to just say that I also personally feel like there's a lot of dance cultures that I know a lot about, but I don't feel necessarily part of it. I feel like I'm an observer of it, right? 70s disco is something that I absolutely love, but I'm too young for 70s disco. Like I wasn't actually going to clubs when I was, 5 years old. It's okay to sort of identify this is a culture of dance that I know a lot about, that, maybe I can DJ, maybe I can play something, I can make a mix, but I'm also doing it as an observer. And I'm giving credit to the people who created that scene and understanding who are, who forms the backbone of this scene and who's welcome in this scene, and, what can I do to be able to contribute to the scene without necessarily feeling like, oh, it must be the one that I came from, right?
When you say dance cultures, I think of like dance in a clear space. Ballroom, voguing, stuff that surrounds that, like nightlife and dance at the clear space, like LGBT bars and clubs. Like, I see that as like the dance culture that I'm part of.
Absolutely. Okay, so we will actually talk a lot about the pioneering queer safe spaces that gave birth to a lot of forms of music that eventually became more mainstream, right? Music can be used to sort of say, this is a space that's for us. We are creating a zone, a sonic zone, that's specifically for a form of safe expression of certain ideas. And we hear this with small variations across a lot of different forms of dance cultures. Early 70s hip-hop came up in the South Bronx. There was a lot of gang warfare, right? And a lot of people actually gravitated to hip-hop as an alternative to violence. Now, it's still competitive. It's very much a way for groups of people who would normally be associated with gangs to figure out how, who's on top, who of the pecking order, who needs to sort of like beef up their skills in a way that doesn't actually result in anybody getting hurt. This is a safe space for us to meet each other without anyone, getting hurt. How many of you have heard of PLUR? Do you know what it stands for? Yeah, that's the mantra, right? It's very much an 80s kind of thing, but it also, that's one of the reasons why they call that explosion of house music the second summer of love, because it has these smiley faces. It seems like a very 1960s hippie thing, only with electronic instruments. So again, this sort of like, creating a safe place for people to express themselves, to be happy in each other's presence, and keeping threats out. That's one of the reasons why dance cultures exist as well. It's like, this is a safe place for us to do a certain kind of expression without the traditional gatekeepers getting into our space, Not that people don't try, and we'll talk a little bit about things like the New York Police Department, which will come up a lot in some of the histories that we're talking about. So I think you've got a pretty good idea already of what a dance culture is, right? In some cases, they are localized scenes. In some cases, it's a little bit more global, or maybe it started local and then it found a global audience. The ownership of certain national cultures, Berlin techno, as an example, Russian hardcore, some of those things are, evidences of basically there is a core group of people who are into creating that music and promoting that music and playing that music and finding an audience. But that doesn't mean the audience is limited to just that country. The fact that we know about it outside of those countries shows that it has a more global reach. And now with the internet, it's so much easier to be able to find out what's going on in some other part of the country. But there's probably a lot of dance cultures that don't have that visibility. Jamaica's done a really, really good job in sort of like telling its story to the rest of the world. But there was a time when that wasn't true. Even up until about the 80s, all anybody outside of Jamaica really knew about reggae music was Bob Marley. It takes time sometimes for a dance culture to become visible outside of their local area. Can anyone think of any like dance culture that just like started off international? Maybe started on the internet? Yeah.
Stuff like Gangnam Style or TikTok, like you dance.
I think TikTok dance crazes are definitely like maybe a very clear example of that. Gangnam Style feels more rooted, I think, in the K-pop scene first. I want you to think a little bit about what dance culture you want to investigate this semester. We'll talk a little bit more about it on Wednesday. We'll see you back here. I'll have a stack of books for you to pick from. So if you don't have a great answer from that, you look at the books and then you say, okay, I guess this one. But if it's something that you actually want to investigate on your own, think about it, talk about it on Wednesday, all right?